What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com, live on Facebook Saturday afternoon. I have just landed in Detroit, and the Packers have been busy. Landed to an announcement in my inbox that Corey Linsley has been extended by 3 years. Actually, the Packers haven't confirmed the terms of the deal, but it is a 3-year extension, as reported by our Tom Silverstein and various other outlets. So the Packers not wasting any time getting started on the offseason heading into 2018. Obviously, the deal for Adams yesterday. Now today, the deal for Corey Linsley, keeping the interior of that line together, depending on what happens at right guard, obviously. But Linsley in the fold for another 3 years. The Packers obviously being proactive, trying to get guys signed and starting their proration of their signing bonuses in the 2017 window prior to the 2018 window. How cold is it in Detroit? Terrence, it is like 10, hovering around 10 degrees. Salvatore, yes. Aaron Rodgers is undoubtedly next up in the pecking order of deals that the Packers will like to get done. I tend to think that will happen after the 2018 league year begins in the spring. They will undoubtedly make him the highest paid player in the league. And I would think they would probably try to spread his cap hits around, much like they did last time around when they signed him to his previous extension. Any comments on Capers, Larry? Nothing to report. We will see. Obviously, he has a game tomorrow that he will be the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. Will he continue to be employed in that capacity following that game into the evening, into Monday? Only Mike McCarthy and the Green Bay Packers know. TT spending that money? He is indeed, and it's, as usual, spending big coin on his own guys. Now, Adams hovering around $14 million per year is obviously a sizable chunk of change, but getting Linsley at the reported numbers were one I saw was $8.5 million annual salary, roughly. Now, these are all very preliminary numbers. We won't really know until we get a look at the contract, and things could change in that regard. But that's some pretty decent snag for the team. 3 years obviously allows Linsley to hit the market again in a couple of years. It's get one more crack at getting a good payday. But it is definitely second-tier money at the center position. Now, there are some good centers making roughly around that. It's a solid signing. There's no doubt about it. It doesn't approach what Jacksonville signed their center for, but that was a 5-year extension, and it was about $10.3 million per year, if I remember right. But signing Linsley up for $8.5 per year for the next 3 years is obviously good business for the Green Bay Packers. Do you see a high draft and free agent pass rush this year? Dustin, that is an excellent question. My colleague Pete Doherty has an excellent column up at PackersNews.com that just went up a little while ago that everyone should read regarding Ted Thompson and the need for the Packers to move on. I mean, Ted Thompson has obviously done yeoman's work throughout his tenure, much more so early on in his tenure than lately. But the pass rush and the lack of pass rush has been killing this team for a number of years. And Ted Thompson, for whatever reason, has refused to address it or refused to add legitimate ammo and spend significant capital, be that free agency dollars and or draft picks. Now, obviously, A, he always picks at the end of rounds. B, he has spent plenty of draft capital on the defensive side of the football. But he has been able to see, much like anybody else who watches this team with regularity, that he doesn't have anyone who can rush the passer on a consistent basis. He has Nick Perry, he has Clay Matthews, both of whom are injury prone. Matthews has been in decline for some time as a pass rusher, although still a very good football player. Nick Perry has, one pass rush move, which is his bull rush. And when it's successful, he is productive. But when he is not, he disappears when it comes to getting to the quarterback. Still sets a mean edge against the run. But these are very obvious things that, for whatever reason, have not moved Thompson to address the pass rush. And that's just one of many things that I've explained here, explained on my podcast, why I agree with Pete, that it's most likely time for some kind of change up top. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's just my opinion and Pete's opinion. But to your question about the pass rush, it is a glaring need on this team. Yet again, heading into the offseason, heading into the 2018 season. Now, and I don't know if that's an outside linebacker, though it should be. I don't know if it's an interior lineman. I doubt that. Maybe even it's a safety with a knack for getting to the quarterback on the blitz. I don't really know what the answer is. I don't know specifically who they have to look at. Obviously, we don't know the free agency landscape until teams start locking guys up with franchise tags. But it is a glaring weakness on this team, and it has to be addressed this offseason. Do they spend a high pick on a wide receiver to be a running mate with Adams long term? I tend to doubt it, although it depends on what you mean by high. I mean, they could easily, it would not surprise me to see them take a guy in the second or third round. I tend to think they probably wouldn't in the first round. But for anyone who doesn't expect them to or said they would never do that, I beg to differ. I think Ted Thompson has shown year in and year out he's always looking to address the wide receiver position. And I know they'll have a lot of money put into the wide receiver position if the contracts stand as they are right now with Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb's set to make $9.5 million, but he's still roughly around $12 million when it comes to his cap hit, similar to Nelson. And now you've thrown in Devontae Adams there. That's a good chunk of coin at the wide receiver spot. However, as the question alludes to, you always have to be looking forward. You always have to be kind of looking down the road. But I don't think like I said, I don't think that means they will, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. I'd trade Nelson and Montgomery for a high pick. Well, Larry, no one's trading for Jordy Nelson, a 33-year-old who clearly lost a step this year, and is pretty much shown that his greatest worth is when he's playing with Aaron Rodgers. Montgomery, maybe someone takes a bite there, but another season bit by injury, obviously missed the second half of the year on IR. It's hard to see someone biting on that. Love what you said about Randall Cobb. Those yak yards are unnoticed but so important. I tend to agree. It's something that a lot of people don't kind of take into account. They just look at the box score and talk about how Cobb has declined, and I just always beg to differ. If you actually look at the tape, he's done anything but. In Madden, that works. Exactly, Salvatore. Does Montgomery replace Cobb? Brian, I don't think so. Not this year. I think they will complement each other. I think they'll play together, but I don't think Cobb is going to be replaced, at least not for 2018. Move Montgomery back to the slot. I think, Nate, I think you'll see him rotate both in the backfield and in the slot. You'll see both. Cobb is undersized and slow. And open and getting yards and, great security blanket for his quarterback. But yeah, undersized and slow. Trade for Richard Sherman. That ain't going to happen. How much salary cap did we save this year by getting these deals done? Aaron, that's a really good question. We have to wait to see the actual contracts first. Obviously they wanted to get this done to get it on the 2017 books and start the proration of the signing bonuses. But it's hard to say with any kind of conviction until we see the actual contracts. Are you having a contest with McCarthy who can grow the longest beard? If I was, then I wouldn't have had it just kind of the nice woman who cut my hair also trimmed my beard. So I guess not. Montgomery is too slow and small for the wide receiver position. You people are just, it's the same dude. No one measures up in Nick's eyes. Dude, you're funny. A pass rusher has to be the first pick in the draft. Doesn't necessarily have to be the first pick, but you don't want to reach for a guy. I mean, the first round is littered with teams that have reached for guys they thought could rush the passer and who just ended up being big, high-priced mistakes. But they absolutely have to address the pass rush. They have to find a guy, or maybe even two guys, who can win a one-on-one on an obvious passing down. That is something that has been sorely lacking. Now, do they have to find it on the first day? Not necessarily. But, history tells you you're more likely to get a guy earlier in the draft. So, and maybe somebody shakes loose in free agency, but as one of our commenters here pointed out, it's not a great crop of free agent pass rushers coming on board this year. And this is before we even see who's being kept via the franchise tag. Chances that McCarthy may be gone too. Dan, not good. I don't think McCarthy's going anywhere. Our secondary needs some veteran help. Michael, I would agree with that. This offseason, I tend to think they would need to go out and sign somebody. But, if Thompson's the one making the call, the chances aren't great. I mean, obviously they went out last year and got Devon House, but that was someone who they'd already had in-house, if you'll pardon the expression. They brought him back on a one-year deal. Maybe they bring him back next year, but I would tend to think they would need somebody to go along with, Demarius Randall and Kevin King, who both seem to be setting up for to be really good players. But they're still going to need another corner, obviously. Now, are they going to put their faith in Lindsey Pipkins or a recovering Quentin Rollins? I highly doubt it. So, stands to reason they'll either have to draft for the position and or address it in free agency. What does a guy do for fun in Detroit? Well, I tell you what, Mike, I believe I'm going to go see The Last Jedi with my colleague Ryan Wood in a little bit, but we shall see. And then tonight I'm going to watch the Badgers stomp on the U. Trade Jordy for Von Miller. Now we're really talking some Madden trades. Is Rollins done in Green Bay? Chad, not necessarily, but I tell you what, Achilles injuries are no joke. They're very tough to come back from, and he wasn't playing great even prior to the injury. So it's a possibility, but only time will tell. That's going to have to play out. King will be spectacular. I think he has a chance to be very good. Butler, Randall, and King could be a deadly threat. Leroy Butler? No, maybe not. How do Brady's and Aaron's contracts compare? It's hard to say without having them right in front of me. I know the conventional wisdom around Brady's contract is that he, quote unquote, takes less so that the team can sign free agents, and that's kind of bunk. He does a lot of restructuring of his contract, and they move money around, but he actually continually gets raises every time they do that. And there are various other ways he's getting paid, and he also has a supermodel wife who's supplementing his income. As Aaron Rodgers reminded us this summer when we asked him about it, the first thing he said is, "You got to remember, Tom has Giselle." Now, he was kind of kidding, but there's some truth to it. Time to get rid of strength and conditioning staff. Jason, I don't think they'll get rid of them. I think they'll look at everything, no doubt about it. But since McCarthy kind of overhauled their rest and recovery and their nutrition and what have you in 2014, they've actually come back from being one of the most injured teams to sitting right in the middle of the road league-wide. Now, this year, they have absolutely been probably one of, if not the worst, as far as games missed due to injury for both starters and backups. But I don't think they're going to kick guys to the curb just because of one season. Do you think Edgar Bennett possibly leaving for a head coaching job? I don't see that. It'd be really hard unless it's somebody who knows Edgar and has worked with him before. It's hard for people to get a read on any of the guys that McCarthy works with on the offensive side of the ball because it's McCarthy's offense. But maybe, possibly, but I would tend to doubt it. Tight end a high need next year, Jeff? I think so. They have to kind of overhaul the position entirely. Obviously, the Martellus Bennett flameout plays into that. They'll have Kendricks under contract. Richard Rodgers is set to be a free agent and is now injured. So, whatever they're going to do there, they will most likely, I would think, have to address it in both free agency and through the draft because traditionally you don't get a whole lot of output from rookie tight ends, no matter how good they are. I mean, look at O.J. Howard this year as a perfect example, a guy who, one of the better tight ends to come out in quite a few years and went to a team that really needed him in Tampa Bay, and he was middling as far as production and play time, etc. So it's a really hard position because of everything they're asked to do in the modern NFL for them to come in and make an instant impact, which would lead me to believe that they will most likely have to look at free agency at least to supplement the position. Thompson doing these signings to save his job? No, Michael, on the contrary, I think he's doing it most likely because it's the right thing to do for the franchise to set them up going forward. Maybe, possibly, it's to set the stage for whoever's next. Don't discount that possibility. And that's just, obviously me just thinking out loud, but it's rare that the Packers do this, that where we have extensions heading into Week 17. Usually they'll do it in the summer or leading up to the first day of training camp and or the first day of the season, but then they usually leave it alone until free agency is kind of hard upon, like say the weekend before heading into free agency, which is usually in March. So these kind of December extensions, late December, close to January extensions are pretty unusual in Green Bay, which makes me wonder, is this Ted setting the table for the next guy? I mean, like I said, that's just guesswork. That's just me thinking out loud, but that's a possibility. But I don't think it's Ted Thompson, quote unquote, trying to save his job. Mark Murphy has made it clear that he can stay in Green Bay as long as he wants. What happened with Marty B doesn't change the fact that we need a blocking tight end. I tend to agree. Packers spending first-round draft pick on whom? Oh, man, that's a great question. Don't have my crystal ball with me right now, but I'll get back to you. What about fullback? Well, they got two of them. They got Ripkowski, and they got... they let him go, but then they brought him back. I can't even keep track anymore. Joe Carriage. Carriage is actually really good. He had an excellent camp. Do you think quarterback is a priority in the draft? That's a good question, Matthew. I don't know about priority, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them take one and have him kind of duke it out with Hundley in camp. Sure seems like these early signings are different. David, I agree. Not their usual modus operandi. Any chance of number 4 coming back to Green Bay in some leadership role? Oh, Lorraine, at first I thought you were making a joke question, and then it was actually a real question. I know Favre talked about possibly wanting to come and do something in Green Bay as far as something in personnel. I can't imagine that ever happening. One being, it would just be odd considering he would have to work with Ted Thompson. Maybe he's coming to try and replace Ted Thompson. That ain't never going to happen. But two, Brett doesn't want to grind like that. I mean, Brett could barely stay in town when he was actually employed by the team. Personnel is a grinding job, and you see a guy like John Elway. He's in it 24/7, 365. That's not Brett. Brett wants to be on his tractor down there in Kiln, Mississippi. He doesn't want to be in the office at 1265 Lombardi, scouting, Division III tight ends. I can't imagine Favre doing that. We need a deep threat wide receiver. John, I absolutely agree. I know the hope was a couple years ago that would be Trevor Davis, but nothing speaks louder than Trevor Davis getting open deep and letting a ball sail right past him. All he has to do is extend his arms for a big gain. If that's your deep threat, you need a new deep threat. Early signing so they can set up a Rodgers deal. Lee, no doubt. Aaron Rodgers will be next, and it will be a monster, mega, insert your description here deal. It is going to be huge. Not playing Callahan to hide him from other teams or because he's that bad. No, Larry, it's neither of those. It's because they believe in Brett Hundley, which I think is a mistaken, misplaced belief. But Hundley is their guy behind Rodgers. They're going to play him until he gets hurt, or unless he gets hurt, and then you'll see Joe Callahan. Why all the Cobb hating lately? Brandon, your guess is as good as mine. I tend to think it's because people have an inability to see a player without looking through the lens of the contract. They compare contracts to guys on other teams, and then they come to the conclusion that Randall Cobb is, quote, not earning his contract. Without having looked at the tape, without having looked at the offense, or the fact that he can't throw himself the football. Des Bryant in Green Bay? Ain't going to happen, James. When will we draft a first-round quarterback? Phil, not this year. So get a John Deere tractor at Green Bay to get Favre back. I don't know why you want Favre back as a personnel guy. Spielman, better than TT. Michael? As of the last few years, it sure would appear so. Rodgers will get in the ballpark of 7 years, $210 million. Sounds good to me. I think Cobb is gone. I love him, but he'll be gone. He's not going anywhere. How many picks do we have this year? 11, Brennan. And that is before compensatory picks. Who will be the next defensive coordinator? I don't know, Cameron. Watch this space. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. Sorry if I couldn't get your question. They do go rather fast, but make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest on the Corey Linsley extension, the Devontae Adams extension, and whatever transpires tomorrow after the game here in Detroit. Thanks a lot, everyone. Talk to you later.